never should, with no, they didn't follow the requirements, and it was a red day. No one should have been on the streets. They rolled it anyway. The next day they were lobbying in D.C., and they lobbied the right people. They ended up getting more contracts than they had before, and they suffered no damage from having 4 of their employees killed by negligence. How did this go on? How did this keep going? And no one noticed. Well, what was happening behind the scenes at the time, back in D.C. in the Dick Cheney administration? We had an interesting clash of ideas. Dick Cheney, from the time that he was working with Nixon and Reagan, believed that the president should have all supreme power. He watched what happened to Nixon. Nixon had broken into an office, and he had to leave because he was doing illegal activity. Reagan had the Iran-Contra affair. He was selling arms to Iran. And Cheney's perspective was that both Reagan and Nixon should have been able to do those activities. They should not have any oversight from any committee or any Congress, that basically the president runs everything, and no one can basically say anything to him about that. And so Dick Cheney used his lawyer in D.C., David Addington, and they wrote quite a number of position papers, which gave, like, covering torture, covering rendition, covering what would happen with prisoners, wiretapping, data gathering. And he just basically decided that George W. Bush should be able to do absolutely anything he wanted, and he should not have congressional oversight. The way that they got around congressional oversight is when Congress would pass a law and Bush would go to sign the law, at the same time that he signed the law, he signed a signing statement that said he didn't have to follow that law. George Bush signed, Bush signed 152 signing statements, 78% of which basically said he didn't have to follow those laws. And so that covered over 1,000 different laws that George W. Bush just said, I don't need to follow these. And so that was how he got away with it. And actually the American Bar Association came out in 2006 and did a study on that and said it was completely unconstitutional. It said it was abhorrent to our type of governance. He's actually required to do a veto. If he is not going to sign that bill, he vetoes it. That's what the law is. But they would just circumvent the law all the time. And so that's how they got away with it. All of the strings that they pulled at that time are very interesting. It's an interesting story. It's a little bit of a long story. But they pulled so much wrangling and infighting that actually the head of the CIA, the head of the FBI, and the head of the Office of Legal Counsel all threatened to quit, to resign, because they were so up in arms, because what they were actually writing and doing was actually unconstitutional and illegal. But if you put the whole picture together, what you have is an idea of world domination. We have world domination coming in from Project for an American Century, which said America should be the only global power. And then we also have that mixed like a Molotov cocktail with Cheney's ideas on presidential supremacy. So what you have here is one world leader. Not virtually, but specifically and exactly one world leader. Now the terrifying thing about that is that one world leader was George W. Bush. Or Dick Cheney, you know, whichever one you want to pick. But if you look at the body of evidence of the choices that they made at the time, and the things that they did, you can see why we have a three-pronged government, so that we have oversight. There's a reason why we have checks and balances, not checks and bonuses. That is Constitution. That is following the Constitution. That's the way that it's made to be. We have oversight for a specific reason. And this is the specific reason why. Now this has specifically just run amok. It has run completely amok. But if you go out today and look on the television set and see what's going on in the media, you wouldn't know it. Because most Americans don't know this stuff. And why is that? Because the media is wrapped up like a birthday present with a lot of tape. And so right now, today as I speak, Dick Cheney has a higher favorability rate in Gallup polls than Nancy Pelosi. Now, what in the world has Nancy Pelosi done compared to this? Could you tell me? What has Nancy Pelosi done? The thing that's happened with Nancy Pelosi is she is demonized on a daily basis on channels like Fox News and every right-wing talk channel you can possibly think of. And so I don't know that people actually know why they hate her, except she's a Democrat. But they definitely don't know why we hate Cheney, because I don't see how you could, put the two next to each other. But right now, as of today, Pelosi has a lower approval rating than Dick Cheney. And the thing that's amazing is he's going out right now on another lying tour. And if you noticed, it was American Enterprise Institute where he was speaking that invited him for that last round of speeches, which was on the same day as Barack Obama. Basically, he's just standing up for all of this and saying that this is fantastic, this is what we should have done, this kept us safe, invading the wrong country, letting Osama bin Laden go, that made us safe, breaking the law, breaking the Constitution, but nobody has any idea. And actually that's working for him. In March of 2009, his approval rating among Republicans was 64%. As of May of 2009, his approval rating among Republicans went up to 70%. So he enjoyed a 6-point rise in 3 months. Among the general public, in 2009, his general approval rating was 21%. As of May of 2009, it had gone up to 37%. Among Republicans, 76% of Republicans do not think that the Iraq War was a mistake. 21% of the normal general public think it was a mistake, or that could have been Democrats, I'm not really quite sure. Only 14% of the general public, that's everybody, thinks that the war went badly, or very badly. So they're just out there saying how they kept us safe, and in fact what they did is they answered 4,000 American deaths, with 4,000 more completely plus, with the deaths of American soldiers in Iraq. Completely unnecessary American deaths. The soldiers that died in Iraq, I don't think that they felt they were kept safer. And why did we do this? If you look at the chain of events, it's almost obvious exactly why we did this. This plan to go into Iraq was put out by PNAC back in the 90s. Regime change in Iraq had to do with our global dominance in the area, definitely had to do with oil, although it ends up in the end we didn't get any of those contracts anyway. I'll tell you who's not safer. The Iraqi people were not safer. The chance of dying a violent death in Baghdad went up 400% as soon as we came. At least 1 million innocent men, women, and children have died since our invasion. How many more are wounded? How many more are homeless? How many more hate America now? I don't see how that kept us safer. At least 160,000 American soldiers have been seriously wounded and injured, many of which who will now be permanently disabled, and we will be paying for the rest of their lives, as well we should. The new administration that's actually in Iraq that was elected in 2006 is mostly tied to religious fundamentalism in Iran. And so to think that we got a democracy, what we have there now is kind of a soup of all kinds of fundamentalists. The interesting thing about Saddam Hussein is Saddam Hussein's regime was a secular regime. It was a secular regime, it was a non-religious regime. A secular regime would never cohort, which is what they used to say, Saddam Hussein cohorts with terrorists. That was something they used to quote quite a bit. That's absolutely silly. That's like saying that Bill Clinton cohorts with who's a fundamentalist preacher, Pat Roberts or something. I mean, it's oil and water. It makes absolutely no sense. And so that's the story of the Iraq War. This was supposed to take 10 minutes. I don't know how in the world I'm going to get it down to 10 minutes. And I do want to end with 2 quotes. The first one is this: "There is no flag large enough to cover the killing of innocent people." And secondarily, the end, or not, it's up to you.